Perfect. Thank you, Zoom. All right. So with that, Ephraim, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Really appreciate that. And thank you for filling in for Betsy. We're really sad to see Betsy move on, but we are also happy for her. But we're thankful for all the years as our events program coordinator for the Seattle Chamber and the Alaska Business Forum. Betsy really has been the lifeblood of the business forum for my entire tenure as chair, and we're really thankful. So I just wanted to say that. But yeah, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Alaska Business Forum, the May 2022 Alaska Business Forum. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ephraim Freilich. I'm your Alaska Business Forum chair and your MC for today. So sorry about that. I'm a born and raised kid from Juneau, Alaska, and I own and operate a policy consulting business that's based between Seattle and Queen Anne, where I have raised my family, and Alaska as well. So today's topic is particularly exciting for me as well. We're hearing about great partnerships, investments, and business opportunities that exist between not only Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, but also our neighbors in between in Canada and really throughout the Cascadia region. We're planning to have Alaska Airlines here today, but we do not. And so we just want to thank our ongoing partner and sponsor, Alaska Airlines, for their really regular and steady partnership here. The Alaska Business Forum could not also exist without the investment and time given to us by Alaska Airlines, and in particular Scott Haberstad, who has been a steady presence on the Alaska Business Forum since I joined. But yeah, I'd like to welcome our first speaker here shortly, Nicholas Santo. Nicholas is the Pacific Northwest Director of Trade and Invest, British Columbia. His team in the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Recovery, and Innovation works with international enterprises to help them build strong links to the resources, skills, and businesses that make British Columbia an attractive place to work and invest. Nicholas has split the past decade between China, the US, and Latin America as a trade and FDI specialist, entrepreneur, and lawyer. We're really excited to have you here today, Nicholas, and to hear about some of your perspectives, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Ephraim, for this introduction, and good morning, everyone. It's really nice to be sharing this morning with you. As Ephraim said, I'm like British Columbia's trade and invest representative here in the Pacific Northwest. And today I will be speaking about like the opportunities that arise in the context of British Columbia's new economic plan that was just released in February of this year. But before starting today's session, I have to acknowledge what happened yesterday night at Lumen Field. I don't know if you were there, if you follow the Seattle Sounders, but for the first time, an American team has won the CONCACAF Champions, which is huge in the soccer world, and that team is the Seattle Sounders. So I want to congratulate all the Seattleites that follow the team, and wish the Sounders the best in this upcoming Clubs World Cup, the first time an American team will be playing there. The atmosphere yesterday at Lumen Field was outstanding, so that's a good point not only for Seattle but also for the whole Cascadia region. Hopefully we get to host a few World Cup games when the World Cup comes to the US, Canada, and Mexico in 2026. So with that, as I mentioned before, I am a business trade and invest representative here in the Pacific Northwest. And just to tell you a little bit about what we do, we work with different businesses from the Pacific Northwest and the US to help them identify opportunities in British Columbia. We help them set up shop there when they decide to expand. We help them identify opportunities for sourcing products, and we do that with the main goal of creating new jobs and economic development for the province of British Columbia. Our team has several representatives across the US. We have people in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. We have people in Los Angeles, Austin, in Boston, in the East Coast, in Sacramento. So we cover most of the United States, like the key business hubs. And the team has been doing this for over 10 years now. How we work with companies, basically we advise them in 3 different stages. The first one is in the planning stage, when they are in need of guidance and advice about how to set up a business in BC. We connect them with the right service providers. We give them overviews of the different tax incentives that are available in the province, and we try to help them make their expansion decision faster. We help as well in the implementation and setup part, not only by connecting with different service providers for setting up the company, accounting, and all these other necessities, but also by helping companies find the right talent for their Canada, for their BC operations. And of course, once they are there, we don't just leave them there. We try to support them as they grow in the province. And we have been doing that for quite some time with a lot of success stories. So as I was saying at the beginning today, I would like to give you a brief about the Stronger BC economic plan. This is the new economic plan that the government launched earlier this year. And the reason why this plan is important is because it comes at a time when there's been a global reshuffling, right? Not only because of all what's going on from a geopolitical perspective, but also because, as John Horgan, BC's premier, says in this plan, we can't go back to the way things were before. I think this is something that most of us agree on, and that's why BC has taken these steps to create and execute this plan. A plan that focuses in creating an inclusive, sustainable, and innovative economy that works for the people. And I want to emphasize those 3 components: inclusive, sustainable, and innovative. I'm going to go now through each of them, sharing with you some details about what the province will be doing in different areas to achieve the goals set in the plan. And I'm also going to share what were the priorities of the BC people, of the BC business community when they were consulted about their thoughts for the future, for the economic future of the region. And the reason why I mention this is because this might be an area in which many of you might be able to identify. These priorities might help many of you identify business opportunities in the province or in the greater Cascadia region. And as you can see in the slide, the main concerns at the moment of different businesses and people in BC are similar to what concern us in the US as well, right? Affordable housing, childcare, healthcare, being able to train and maintain a skilled workforce, immigration, environmental standards, dealing with the climate emergency that is hitting many places in the world. So if you have any business idea in those spaces, please come talk to us. We'll be more than happy to help you connect with potential matches, companies that match what you are doing in British Columbia, and hopefully that helps you identify business opportunities for your business to grow. In terms of inclusive growth, the province is set to execute a series of new actions. One of the most important, perhaps, is launching the Future Ready Skills for the Jobs of Tomorrow plan. This is a major challenge that many provinces, countries, cities around the world are facing. There's not enough qualified talent, especially in the trades space, to support the growth of different industries. So in order to tackle that challenge, BC is implementing this plan that hopes to create a substantial amount of qualified workers to help like local companies that are growing and expanding, as well as like foreign businesses that decide to use BC as a platform for growth. Another very important priority for BC is creating a small business diversity and inclusion action plan. And this is paired with what you see below, right? Like collaborating on an indigenous economic development agency. It is a huge priority for the British Columbia government right now to make sure that there are new and bigger opportunities for the First Nations, for First Nations entrepreneurs. On our end, for example, here in the Pacific Northwest, we are planning to run a First Nations accelerator later this year. And once the details of that programs are out, we'll be more than happy to share them as well with the community here in the Pacific Northwest. So we can see if there are like opportunities for matchmaking and for collaboration. In terms of clean growth, well, like here the priorities for BC are in 2 or 3 its initiatives in 2 or 3 spaces, but most important perhaps it's developing a mass timber action plan. The forestry sector is obviously fundamental for the province economy, and that said, it needs to keep growing with sustainable practices, right? So that's why the clean growth has been identified as a priority for the years to come. Likewise, the province will create an industrial and manufacturing action plan with the purpose of attracting advanced manufacturing companies to set up facilities in the region. I feel that one way or another, we are all feeling the pain of what's happening with the semiconductors shortage, how like, you know, if you want to buy a car, you have to wait for months. I was reading this morning that even semiconductor factories are having trouble to source semiconductors for the machines that manufacture the semiconductors. So this is why it's important not only to keep growing that kind of industries, but also to keep growing them closer to where the customers are, closer to North America as part of this nearshoring trend that we have been seeing in the last few years, and that's something that BC keeps top of mind, and I thought it was important that I flagged that today. There will be many organizations in British Columbia in charge of implementing some of the initiatives of the Stronger BC Economic Plan, organizations like Destination British Columbia, which has been around for a while, but will continue to work to make sure that that tourism continues to be an important part of the province economy. Organizations like Innovate BC are coming up with very, very good programs that in some cases offer subsidies and support, subsidies and support to local companies for R&D activities, for innovation activities as well. And I strongly encourage you to check out their website, because if you do set up a company in British Columbia at some point, Innovate BC certainly could be an organization that help your project grow in the region. And then there are other organizations such as Clean BC and BC Housing. Clean BC just launched the Clean BC roadmap to 2030, right? It's like a really nice booklet over here that you can find online that details like what the priorities are for BC in terms of like low carbon fuel standards, in terms of emissions, in terms of like electric vehicles deployment. So I strongly encourage you to check that out when you have a moment. And then like focusing specifically in the BC-Alaska relation and what we could do to bring the two regions closer. Like, well, first of all, I wanted to share some data provided by Canada's Trade Commissioner Service that even though if it's like from 2019, it's not like current, it still gives you an idea of what the Canadian presence in Alaska, for example, is, right? Like there are like nearly 60 Canadian-owned companies operating in Alaska. Those companies create over 4,000 jobs in this US state. So there's a substantial Canadian economic presence there that can certainly be used as a trampoline for many Alaskan companies that want to somehow take their operations global. It's important as well to remember that the Cascadia Innovation Corridor has become a huge priority for the government of British Columbia, as well as for the government of the state of Washington. There is truly a Cascadia vision. And look, as Ephraim was saying at the beginning, I personally live in many places around the world. I'm originally from Uruguay. I live in China, San Francisco, many places in China, in fact, Beijing, Hong Kong, Foshan. And the reason why I mention this is because I really feel that this particular region in the world has a tremendous potential. There's a lot that the Cascadia region has to offer to the world. And of course, it's a great place to live and to build a business from. It's really one of the most beautiful places in the world, but also a place with a unique energy, with the right conditions to attract global talent. And as someone who doesn't come from here, I strongly encourage all of you who are from here to be extremely proud of what the region has to offer and to take advantage of that, embrace it, to build this region as a global powerhouse. The Cascadia Innovation Corridor, as I was saying a bit before, comes to be, you know, with the objective of improving connectivity, productivity in the region, in creating like an economic zone, an innovative economic zone of unique characteristics. So when you think about different business project opportunities, like I strongly encourage you as well to look at them in the context of this vision, not only within the Cascadia region, but also thinking about how the Cascadia region can be a great platform for your businesses to go global. And with that, I will finish my presentation today, and I'll be happy to answer your questions when we are done with this part. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. That was very in-depth and really did a great job of connecting our region as a whole. So we really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have some questions for you in the back end. Next we'll hear from Maddie Morris. Maddie Morris is a trade commissioner tasked with creating economic ties between Canada and the US Pacific Northwest in the aerospace, ocean technologies, and defense security sectors. Based out of the Consul General of Canada in Seattle. And before this, Maddie was previously employed by the British government during Brexit and in Scottish Parliament during the Scottish referendum for independence. So a lot of big action items there. She graduated with a Master of Science in International Relations from the University of Edinburgh, where she researched her master's dissertation on the Lebanese economy in Beirut at the beginning of the Syrian refugee crisis. Maddie is a vocal advocate for transgender rights and an inclusive workplace culture. I'm really excited to hear from Maddie. And as you know, Maddie, a lot of us in Alaska are very interested in the ocean technology space as well. So I probably have some questions for you as well offline. So thank you very much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I'll try not to let you down on that. Let's see if I can get my screen up. Okay. Can everyone see that? Perfect. Well, let's jump right in. So as was said, my name is Maddie Morris. I am a trade commissioner based out of the consulate here in Seattle. You know, I have to start off with an admission. I am actually not Canadian. I really hope no one feels misled. But as was stated, I have over almost a decade of experience working with foreign countries in the United States on trade and investment relationships. You know, this is, I was speaking with Nicholas beforehand. I think we decided that we were going to take slightly different avenues to how we presented information today. So Nicholas brought a lot of really wonderful facts and that kind of talk about the wider relationship between kind of Western Canada, Alaska, and the U.S. Pacific Northwest, the Cascadia corridor as a whole, and with British Columbia being the territory slash province with the largest population base. We really didn't want to step on each other's toes. So I took this as an opportunity to kind of look back through my emails, look through all the action items I've worked on over the last 2 years to bring to the forefront kind of some opportunities that I've worked on that might spark some ideas from folks out there in the audience. I focus as a trade commissioner on 4 specific sectors: the defense security sector, aerospace, automotive transportation, and maritime. So I'm going to jump into each one of these sectors and talk a little bit about some of the things that myself, the trade team at the consulate, and the consulate as a whole has been up to over the last couple of years. So first off, defense security sector. So this conversation was very timely, as last month Ambassador Kristen Hillman visited Alaska to be a part of the Arctic Encounter Symposium. That symposium is the largest annual Arctic policy event in the US. The consulate has basically 3 distinct areas that we work in. We have a policy team that works on maritime, defense security, and other policy-related initiatives. We have a team that focuses on international business, which is where I sit as a trade commissioner. My job is very similar to Nicholas's in that we support Canadian companies with their business development opportunities in the US Pacific Northwest and Alaska, as well as helping US companies with opening footprint or hiring folks anywhere throughout Canada. So where Nicholas focuses specifically on the province of British Columbia, I am it for Canada as a whole. In the course of my job as a trade commissioner, we've had some really awesome opportunities to work with some Alaskan-based and local Washington State-based defense and security partners. Some of them are listed here: the U.S. Department of Energy's Alaska Field Office, the Naval Undersea Warfare Center, a division here in Keyport, Washington State, the U.S. Navy's Northwest Tech Bridge, and pictured, I thought, to kind of round out the defense partnership is the Canadian Forces Base, Esquimalt, which is in Vancouver Island, British Columbia, which is the Canada's Pacific Forces naval base. So one of the things that I do as a trade commissioner is try and support these organizations with finding new innovative technologies coming out of Canada. A couple of examples of ones that I've introduced them to in the last couple of years include an ultrasonic heat exchanger cleaning solution that could be used for Nimitz-class aircraft carriers, as well as an autonomous inspection of marine vessel propulsion. In addition to naval partnerships and innovation for the U.S. and Canadian navies, a really great story of partnership between Canada and the U.S. military is with the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. There are 2 NORAD bases in our Cascadia corridor area, one in Tacoma and one in Anchorage. Something that folks in the audience might not know: both are jointly staffed by U.S. and Canadian military. The NORAD deputy commander at the Joint Base Emmeldorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska, is Canadian and is frequently in charge of North American airspace. Interesting tidbit, it was a Canadian who closed the North American airspace after 9/11. And if you haven't seen the play Come From Away, I would highly recommend. It is a wonderful example of U.S.-Canadian partnership. This partnership with NORAD is becoming increasingly important in the context of the current war between Russia.
Did we lose Maddie there, or is that my internet?
I was asking the same question, but I do think that we lost her.
Roger that.
Well, we can go to perhaps if anyone has questions for Nico, we can jump in with some of those now, and hopefully it's just a little internet glitch for Maddie and she'll be back.
Okay. Well, I can start us off, and I guess this is a question that we can also pose to Maddie when she returns. But Nicholas, we hear a lot about or we hear sometimes about conflicts between our regions, right? Oftentimes centering around resources like salmon or Pacific Salmon Treaty or mining impacts. But it sounds like both you and Maddie focus on partnerships and places where we can enhance relationships. And where do you see is like and Maddie, thank you for hopping back on there, but we lost you. And I was just quickly asking Nicholas a question in the meantime, but where do you see the greatest opportunity for building relationships in light of oftentimes what we're hearing in the news, like I said, the conflicts around resources? Where can we partner on resources?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that like the best opportunity for partnership when it comes to resources is in, like trying to go together to look for new markets, especially in the Asia Pacific region. The Asia Pacific region is obviously the region that's driving global growth, that has been driving global growth for the last like 15, 20 years, and like looking to the future. Obviously it's going to become increasingly important, right? Like Southeast Asia, like obviously China, despite all the geopolitical tensions that are that exist today. But to give you an example, like Canada has probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest, network of free trade agreements. So even stronger than the US network, right? And from that perspective, Alaskan companies, as well as companies from other regions in the Pacific Northwest, could use Canada as a platform to penetrate new markets, to identify new clients in these new markets. And these opportunities would not be available if it weren't for that existing network of free trade agreements. So there's always going to be conflict. It's unavoidable, especially in regions that have borders. But I feel that it's obvious that what brings us together is greater than what drives us apart, and the economic opportunities, the business opportunities are just there. It's a matter of creating the spaces for the companies from both regions to get to know each other better and to identify the opportunities together.
Thank you, Nicholas. And Maddie, I guess I'll kick it back to you and either offer you the opportunity to kind of answer that resource-based question or to dive back in, and then we can answer questions on the back end too.
Sure, let's dive back into the presentation, and then happy to speak to that question later. What was the last thing you heard from me?
I'm not sure exactly where it cut off. I know what slide we were on, but it kind of was a slow melt away on my end.
Okay. Had we gotten to the aerospace portion yet?
I think we were right before that.
Okay. All right. So
you had just stopped talking about the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
Okay. All right. Well, perfect transition point. A hard cut. But I was just about to moving away from defense and security and moving on to the aerospace sector. So one of the projects that I've been working on for the last 2 or 3 years, which is a particularly interesting one in terms of joint challenges that Northern and Arctic Canada is facing with Alaska. Boeing ended production of the gravel runway kit for their 737-200s. There just wasn't a large enough demand for it, despite the fact that there are over 172 gravel runways serving remote Alaskan communities, as well as 130 in Northern Arctic Canada. So this was, most of these communities are communities that are, strong Indigenous led communities that the removal of the service of this kit really put their communities as a whole at risk. And so the consulate here in Seattle helped partner with the Yellowknife Northwest Territories-based Northern Air Transport Association to get them in touch with Boeing to work with different Alaskan-based stakeholders to do some research into how can we make sure that these Northern Arctic communities are able to continue to have reliable air service, not just passenger, but also for cargo, to make sure that the resources these communities need to continue on can overcome, the challenge of not being able to handle what has historically been kind of the largest aircraft that has been able to serve those populations. So that's one opportunity that we've been working on the last couple of years. Another area of partnership, and this really over the pandemic became a really important issue for the consulate to work with our Alaska and BC and Washington state-based partners, was flight training. The oil and gas industry is the largest component of Alaska's economy. 85% of the budget is supplied by oil and gas revenues. But these fields require regular surveying to ensure that they meet environmental standards, as well as making sure that the oil and natural gas is able to continue flowing. But in order for these pilots to be able to maintain their surveying of pipelines and fields on the North Slope and elsewhere in Canada, they're required to undertake manual or mandatory flight training. Most of these pilots in Alaska have to come to Canada, either to the Pacific Sky Training Center in Calgary, Alberta, or the Canadian Flight Center in Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, as well as a number of other flight training schools and simulators that are scattered across Canada. And this became a really real issue to make sure that oil and gas was able to continue to flow during the pandemic when the border was closed. So our team at the consulate worked hand in hand with a lot of these small aircraft fleets to make sure that their pilots were able to stay accredited, stay up in the air, and keep oil and gas flowing over the course of the pandemic. Another area in the aerospace sector that, of course, Boeing is the major player here kind of in the Cascadia corridor region for their work manufacturing and assembling both commercial and defense aircraft here. But another portion of the aerospace sector that doesn't get talked a lot about, that the Cascadia corridor really is a kind of global hub for, is aerial firefighting. Wildfires are an issue that, I think throughout the Cascadia corridor has really become an increasing issue over the last few years. And, I've pulled up some facts specifically in Alaska. Since 1990, 14 fire seasons have exceeded 1 million acres. I think 2014 was the highest on record that went up to 6 million acres that were burned in wildfires. But interesting that the Cascadia corridor is home to kind of 3 separate aerial firefighting companies, Con Air and Folsom Aviation, both in British Columbia, Abbotsford, and Aeroflight is located in Spokane, Washington. And really, these 3 companies combined service most of the aerial firefighting contracts and needs in Alaska and North America at large. So really, one of the areas we really focus on outside of defense and security safety is trying to make sure that we are able to limit the amount of impact that wildfires have on our communities, as well as the impact of the carbon that's released into the atmosphere. The final kind of aerospace partnership between Canada and Alaska that I thought I would mention is obviously the transportation requirements in Alaska look a lot different than in other regions of the world, as spread out as the population centers are. Canada is very proud of Viking Air, who manufactures the Otter Twin Series 400 out of Victoria, British Columbia. They are kind of that model, both the standard and the float options, are one of the most popular model planes for flying conditions in Alaska. And interesting note was the world's busiest seaplane base is in Lake Hood, near the Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. So moving on to some opportunities that the consulate has been a part of in the automotive space. One that we're currently helping advertise is Launch Alaska is currently seeking applications for an 8-month accelerator program, looking for startups looking to do business in Alaska. Trade Commissioner Services is trying to promote this opportunity to Canadian startups that think that they can further increase the strong relationship between Alaska and our part of the world. Though they are looking for, in the vertical, specifically in transportation, energy, and industry, anything that can really focus on this key priority of the Government of Canada, British Columbia, and I think the Cascadia corridor at large is looking to create more sustainable and climate-friendly solutions to existing problems. So application for that closes on May 15th. To kind of jump off of the current application period that's open, this is maybe my favorite example that I was able to dig up that really connects Alaska, Canada, and Washington State. eCamion is a Canadian provider of flexible battery storage technologies, and they were previously selected to be a part of a Launch Alaska cohort. Anchorage, Alaska made EV history by purchasing the state's first commercial electric trucks. Renton, Washington manufactured Peterbilt, both a refuse truck and a box truck. And Anchorage then selected eCamion to design the charging station to service these Washington State-built PACCAR vehicles. So I thought this was an interesting illustration of kind of a Canadian electric charging point technology working with a Washington State manufacturer to serve the needs of a population in Alaska, which I think is really a perfect example of the intertwined nature of our Pacific Northwest region. Moving on to the mining sector, there are 13 active open pit mines in the US. 3 are located in the greater Cascadia region. 2 of which are in Alaska, the Fort Knox mine, the Red Dog mine, the 3rd being in Idaho. Part of what the consulate's trade team does is we like partnering with companies on creating kind of pitch challenges and showcases for innovative startups. We recently partnered last week with Imperial Oil to look for technologies that could potentially help their operations in Canada and Alaska. In Surrey, British Columbia-based Cascadia Scientific was selected. They have created an onboard vehicle fuel management system, which is able to reduce the amount of emissions that come from large heavy-duty machinery used specifically in open pit mining. They are currently working with a number of open pit mines in Brazil and are starting conversations with those kind of in our region. So again, an example of our region coming together to try and solve a greater issue of sustainability. So with that sustainability point, moving on to the maritime sector, both on a policy and on a business-to-business level, I think Nico was starting to reference, it's working together is really kind of the way we see we're stronger together as a Cascadia corridor region than focusing on our differences. And I think that the Port of Vancouver's ECHO program is a really great example of some policy leadership that is crossing the border between Canada and Washington State. The Canadian version of the Silent Sound Initiative has been around since 2014, has gathered buy-in from more than 80% of shipping companies that are coming in and out of the Port of Vancouver, really looking to make sure that we protect that JPOD, which, I think is a great example that, the orcas don't, they don't care about an international boundary. Why should we kind of focus on our differences when we can work together to solve these kind of mutual challenges that are facing, really the entire Cascadia corridor region. To talk more about sustainability and fuel efficiency on the maritime side of things. Another great example of a partnership kind of focused on this area. Canadian company OPDAC has been working with commercial fishing fleets in Alaska to really reduce the level of emissions that come from commercial fishing fleets through kind of use of artificial intelligence and data analytics, which, in addition to reducing carbon emissions, creating a more sustainable maritime industry, hopefully also can contribute to finding more efficient speeds that are also safe for marine wildlife in the area. So that was my presentation. I hope that by going through a few kind of small examples of the types of partnerships that the consulate has been involved with over the last few years. I feel like when you're talking about business opportunities, you don't know what you don't know. And I think sometimes just going and talking about some of the stakeholders that are out there, some of the companies that are working together already can really prompt some ideas on, what are ways that we can continue these partnerships, expand these partnerships, and really help draw our ecosystems even closer together moving forward. So with that, open to any questions, and we'll bring Nicholas back as well.
Thank you, Maddie, very much. And it was a masterful job in recovering after that internet cutout. So we appreciate you sticking with us there. And yeah, we'll open it up to audience questions now, as Maddie and Leah both highlighted. As a reminder, there's no Q&A box today. So please let us know if you have a question in the chat or through the raised hand feature in Zoom. And I'm going to have Lee also help me monitor the chat or the raised hands and jump in if we need to. But I just want to say thanks for mentioning that Launch Alaska program, Maddie. It's an exciting connection. We have many of the same problems and should be combining investment force to innovate, accelerate new businesses that can help us solve these problems. So I love that. And, also I appreciate the mention of, our Indigenous communities. So, to build on what you talked about there, and this can be for both of you, but Maddie, you mentioned Indigenous communities. How can we in the business community support economic growth opportunity in the sectors on which you focus for our First People?
Sure. So, first and foremost, if we aren't already connected and you're out in the audience, please feel free to connect with myself. The Canadian Trade Commissioner Service views supporting Indigenous communities as really a key priority for our department and for the government of Canada as a whole. I think Nicholas mentioned that British Columbia is looking to put on an Indigenous focus accelerator. The consulate here in Seattle has done that in the past and will continue to do so. In the past, we've done Indigenous focus accelerators in the food and drink industry, as well as we're hopefully looking more in retail, consumer goods, and fashion moving forward. It is on a theoretical level, it is a giant priority, but also on a practical level, it is an area that we are actively trying to do whatever we can. So if you have an idea or if you want to be a part of supporting Indigenous communities, it is something that please reach out and, we will be happy to hopefully partner on and lend whatever sort of support we can to making sure that marginalized groups in Canada, have equal opportunity to the opportunities that are out there.
And Nicholas, I don't know if do you want to chime in there?
I'll second what Maddie just said. I think that the key here is thinking outside the box, right? Like not like doing the same thing that was done in the past, but looking at sectors in which First Nations entrepreneurs have a strength, like sustainable fashion, for example, which is a huge one these days, and try to empower those companies either by connecting them with key e-commerce players that could help them take their operations global by connecting them with investors that have a specific, a very specific sector focus that could match their economic activities. So that kind of action is the kind of action that we'll be trying to empower. Yeah, that's what I would like to add.
Thank you, Nicholas. And I got more questions unless anybody else wants to jump in from the chat. And so Lee, I'll count on you to let me know if anybody's waiting.
I'll let you know. None yet.
Thank you. Yeah, well, so pre-pandemic, I toured Vancouver Island with my family for the first time. And like I mentioned, I'm a born and raised Southeast Alaska kid. So like, feels like I could throw a rock up there. But it felt like both really familiar and a whole new world, right? I didn't know that expanse of amazingness existed, sort of, right? And so as I was on that trip, I kept thinking to myself, this feels like home. There should be more connections. There should be more opportunity for cross-border tourism, right? And creating a kind of a tourism region from Cascadia through BC to Yukon and to Alaska. And it seems like we're maybe missing an opportunity. Is this something that the Canadian government and you all are thinking about, is trying to create a cohesive tourism unit or zone? And obviously the pandemic changed things. But as we come out on the other side and look to new opportunities and new ways of doing things.
Maddie, you want to go first, or I can go first if you want. Yeah, well, Ephraim, I have to say, like, you probably know the region better than I do because I'm not from here, as I said. But with with the experience of having been in different places around the world, I reiterate that the potential of the whole Cascadia region is enormous, and obviously mostly from a tourism perspective, right? Like there are big efforts being conducted by organizations like Destination BC, Destination Canada as well at the federal level to better showcase and promote the beautiful places that Canada has to offer for global tourists. And now I feel that even though prices are going up, prices of plane tickets and everything, tourism is going up. Like as we start to learn to live with the pandemic, I don't like to say that we are like coming out of the pandemic because I don't think that's true, but we are learning to live with it. I think new opportunities will emerge, and certainly the Cascadia region is like one of the best places you could visit in this new world, especially because of all the outdoors activities that the region offers, right? So the province and Canada will strengthen their efforts to showcase these to different global audiences, and hopefully we can pick up on some of the Asian tourism that was driving most of our tourism economy, like before the pandemic, right? Like and tap into new pools of tourists as well in different regions like Latin America.
It's funny you mentioned tourism, and I understand why you mentioned tourism. I think when you look at the economy of Alaska, oil and gas is number one, tourism is number two, maritime is number three. So tourism is a huge player in our region for driving economic growth. And I'm glad you asked the question. The consulate just had a call yesterday with the Alaska Travel Industry Association, working. We didn't even plan that. Is looking to hopefully restart a MOU which has existed for 20 years. The program is called North to Alaska, which is looking to promote tourism by car, being the highway, kind of all the way from top to bottom, and getting people to really, we talk about driving up and down the Pacific coast of California. Why aren't we talking about driving up the Pacific coast of Alaska, BC, and Washington State? So no, this is absolutely an area that, there are conversations going on. And, certainly when you speak about tourism more at large, we're happy to partner with the Port of Seattle on kind of the cruise industry in particular. The consulate has had to be very reactive over the last 2-3 years on COVID-related concerns for the cruise industry. But we're really excited to see the rebounds that are happening in those areas. We're excited to see the ports in Vancouver and up and down the Pacific coast. We're happy to see them opening up. We're happy to see people getting back out. And certainly, we expect, for that industry to make a full recovery as more people look to get out of our 600 square foot Seattle apartments and travel and get north.
And Maddie, to pick on what you just said, this is not something that you just read about. I personally know a group of 3 filmmakers that will be traveling from Alaska to Patagonia by electric car. They will cross the whole Americas, basically the whole continent. And that's the kind of opportunity that our regions could tap into, right? Because even in the development of IP, with tourism as the source of that IP, that's a huge opportunity as well. So this is happening, and I think this is like a great value proposition for tourists from all over the world.
Do they have room in the car for one more? I'd love to join.
Well, I could ask, I don't mind asking. So I'll let you know after the call.
Thank you.
I recently drove my family, we're canceling air travel. And so we found other trips. And one of the trip that we settled on was from Seattle back home to Alaska by car, which obviously we made it as far as Bellingham before putting our car on the Alaska Marine Highway. And it was empty. And it was just such a beautiful trip. And, obviously because of the pandemic restrictions that are ongoing, we weren't able to stop in the BC communities. But during that also trip, I kept imagining like there is a lot of opportunity for people to be getting off of these ferries and doing Alaska, BC, Washington trip all in one. And I do see a hand up. And so Janet, I'll give you the floor.
Hi, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed the discussion today. Thank you both. So my question has to do with 2 things that I think Washington and BC are well known for, and how those can translate up to Alaska. And that first would be the tech industry, the boom that's obviously going on in the Northwest here. And also Vancouver is such a hub for the film and entertainment industry. I love nothing better than seeing a movie that's supposedly filmed in New York and you see the mountains in the background. That's just one of my favorite things. And I was wondering if you 2 could address anything that might be going on in those 2 aspects. Thank you.
Yeah, perhaps I could get started. I can't speak to any specific provincial program related to this and or state program, because honestly I'm not familiar with it. But what I could say is that in this current context, there have been countries like creating like nomad visas, right? Like for digital nomads that are working from all around, from anywhere in the world. Like Airbnb, without going any further, announced it like this week or the week before that they would allow their employees to work from anywhere in the world, basically. So that obviously creates huge opportunities for regions like Alaska, right? I also personally believe that that's one of the best ways of solving some of the economic pains that many people have in urban areas, right? It's extremely challenging to buy a house in the Seattle area. It's extremely challenging to buy a house in the San Francisco region. And this is not just an American problem. This is a problem that's happening all over the world. Because when I speak to my friends in Montevideo, they have the same problem that many people have here in urban areas, big urban areas in the US. So like if we could bring people who are highly qualified and who have high salaries to regions that are more remote, like Alaska, we could not only make life easier for that people because they will be able to do more with their money, but we could also create development for like those regions at a time that when they need it the most. So my personal opinion is that this should be a priority for any government around the world, especially for those from remote regions. And if they can come up with programs like like the Launch Alaska program and tie that with some sort of immigration benefit. There's something very powerful in there. So, so yeah, that's the first point. With regards to the film industry and to the content industry overall, you know, like there's like tremendous potential for the whole Cascadia region when it comes to like thinking of documentaries. Like Netflix are investing, like even though now that they are reducing their expenses, right? Like they're still investing heavily in this kind of content. Like I have kids, I watch Disney Plus every other day, and what we usually watch are videos of orcas here in the Pacific Northwest, or polar bears in Alaska, and you know, that kind of thing can be like, you know, like companies can double down in investing in that kind of content, and well, like both like Alaska and BC have a lot to offer from that perspective, right?
As kind of a quick addition to Nicholas, you know, Canada, the Canadian federal government is incredibly supportive of research and development opportunities that happen within Canada. We have something called a scientific research and economic development tax credit for any companies that are partnering on research and development activities kind of within the borders of Canada. You know, we point to a lot of kind of smaller, you know, tech companies that, you know, if they're able to open up a footprint in Canada, a lot of them, you know, opening up offices, as Nicholas can probably tell you, in Vancouver, you know, and getting to be, you know, a part of larger companies' research and development opportunities. You know, we really do encourage companies, you know, to come out and check out the ecosystem that's going on in Canada. You know, certainly echo the point that Canada is seeing kind of, at least over the last 2 years, has seen the same kind of, I guess, outflux from the cities into more kind of, you know, smaller communities, more affordable communities, you know, as the digital nomad lifestyle has kind of continued to grow. But, you know, I think, again, in talking about our similarities, it'll be really interesting to see, you know, how the world pivots as the pandemic ends, as return to work, you know, begins to solidify. You know, what is the global economy going to look like moving forward? And, you know, I think that's something that, you know, across the Cascadia corridor is a question that we're asking ourselves as we look to move forward.
Thank you both. That was, yeah, exciting and interesting. Maddie, you mentioned broadband or connectivity a little bit, and that's, as you know, an issue we face across Alaska, right? Is trying to enter a new world economy with places like Dutch Harbor, the largest seafood port in the world, or excuse me, in the country by leaps and bounds in the US. But I was out there and I recently, and my wife called me and we got a charge that she was calling Russia. And then the phone call cut out after 5 minutes and we got like a $50 bill in the mail. You know, so like how can we really have modern businesses and innovative businesses under that situation? I mean, are you guys seeing, obviously not that to that extreme, broadband challenges across the more rural places in you know, coastal Canada, and are there opportunities for us to team up, whether that's through aerospace or something else, to accomplish or you know, surmount these issues together?
100%. That is certainly an issue that is universal to kind of northern Canada, Arctic communities, just kind of going across the Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, etc. You know, that is, whenever I have the privilege of having a phone call, whether it be with a tribal council or with a trade organization, you know, connectivity is one of the first things. And, you know, I think you're absolutely right. I think this is one of those similar challenges that, you know, through innovation accelerators like the ones mentioned today, through partnering, through kind of research and development, hopefully we can help find solutions to these problems. And, you know, I think I've spent a lot of my time focusing on specifically the Canada-Alaska connection, but also looking at the major tech companies that are located right here in Seattle. When we talk about the Amazon Kuipers of the world, when we talk about the Starlinks, how can we work with these major players in the local Seattle market to make sure that, they have their eye on these remote communities in Alaska, in Northern Canada, across the Arctic, to make sure that, the global economy is open to all and is inclusive to communities that are, that have been, historically forgotten by the global marketplace. And I think really that's to me, that's a really important part of working for the government of Canada, is making sure that, we scream from the top of our lungs, that we want to partner with these large companies to work together on finding solutions to these challenges.
Yeah, and I perhaps add that if we can use these technologies in the Ukraine, we can certainly use them in the Yukon and in Alaska as well. So yeah.
Thank you both. And I don't know, I would open it up to one last opportunity for audience questions, if anybody has those. But yeah, I mean, we're coming close on time, and so I just want to thank both of our speakers today. It's been awesome to really get out of our usual comfort zone of having Alaska speakers talking to a Washington audience oftentimes, and really bring in the Canadian perspective here in this conversation, because our conversations really aren't inclusive if we aren't talking about this, the region in between, right? If we're blacking out that area in the map and just talking about Alaska and Washington State, we aren't getting the full picture. So I really want to thank both of you for your time today and your perspectives, and helping us to better understand our region as a whole. It's been eye-opening. So I really appreciate you. And I'm going to turn it over to Lee now to close us out. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I will echo thank you to Nicholas and Maddie for speaking today. And Ephraim, thank you so much, not only for moderating today, but for being our Alaska Business Forum Committee Chair for this season. We really appreciate your support and your work at all of our events. So thank you, thank you. To everyone else, thanks for joining us today. As mentioned, this is the last Alaska Business Forum event of the season, so we'll take the summer off. And then a couple more notes here. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Alaska Airlines. And then just a plug for the Seattle Chamber. If you're here today and you are not a member, we encourage you to check out our membership options on our website. Lots of different levels for different sizes of business and different needs. And if you are already a member, go to the website anyway, see what we have to offer. It might be different from the last time you looked. Make sure you're signed up for all the emails that you want to get so you can hear what we're doing. And that is it. So keep a look in your inbox for future programs. But for now, enjoy. I hesitate to say summer because it's raining here at my house, but enjoy your break. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.